It's our starting pitcher preview, part 2. Up next on a Kokomo Friday.
Alcantara, Soroka, you look so good in Boca. Peralta, Manoa, bounce back for Aaron Nola. Giolito, Castillo, Yoshida, Mosuzuka.
Happy Kokomo Friday and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on February 20th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, it is our starting pitcher preview, part 2. We will try and get through the top 40 starting pitchers in ADP, and then we'll wrap up with some sleepers, breakouts, and busts. Let's get right into it. We'll pick up where we left off yesterday and back into starting pitcher ADP using Fantasy Pros average draft position, an aggregate of 6 different sources so far: CBS, Yahoo, ESPN, NFBC, RT Sports, and Fantrax, as always, subject to change. So let's get into the 5th round. We have Cole Ragans with an ADP of 53 and Freddy Peralta with an ADP of 58. Cole Ragans, a tumultuous season for good old Coley boy. Surface level numbers were awful, but the underlying metrics were elite. 4.67 ERA, 250 FIP, 245 XFIP, 252 Sierra, 14 K per 9, 38% K rate. Among starting pitchers with at least 60 innings pitched, he ranked first in K minus walk rate. But he only threw 61 2/3 innings due to a strained rotator cuff, and he has a history of arm trouble. So, to me, this is the hardest pitcher to rank in fantasy baseball. I believe he is the biggest boom or bust option in the top 20 starting pitchers, maybe in the entire player pool. Scott, what do you think about Cole Ragans?
I love him. I think you're overstating the bust potential. Sure, he could get hurt like he did last year, but you know, a lot of times with this sort of injury, the concern is that he never quite gets right, or it takes a long time for him to get right with a lot of setbacks along the way. And I think it should come as a relief to everybody for Cole Ragans that he came back. He came back at the end of last year and looked every bit like the ace we knew in those 3 starts: a 2.77 ERA, a 0.77 whip, a 15.2 K per 9. He was a monster. And really, he was a monster prior to the injury, too. The 4.67 ERA was probably the biggest fluke you'll find among all pitching stats across the league last year. Easiest way to demonstrate this, compared to that 4.67 ERA, a 2.63 xERA, a 2.50 FIP, his 15.8% swinging strike rate. I believe it would have ranked first among qualifiers if I remember the leaderboard correctly. Like that is as elite as it gets. 14.3 K per 9 across the all 13 of his starts. I mean, he was as good as we've ever seen him, but his season was obviously shortened by the injury, and then he didn't get enough time for the correction in the ERA to play out. Based on where he's going in drafts, I don't think anybody's sleeping on him, and they shouldn't. But just relative to you, it sounds like I don't find Cole Ragans to be particularly hard to rank. I don't think his risk is. I'm not going to say he's. There are pitchers within the first 12 we've covered that are less risky than Ragans. But I don't think he's the riskiest either. Just 2 years ago, we saw him throw 186 in a third innings. So, like, we know he can do it. That first question I was asking yesterday, can he do it? Yes, we saw Ragans do it just 2 years ago. Go ahead.
I will point out, Ragans does have a history of arm trouble. That is a true statement. But It's worth actually going through what that arm trouble was, which is from 2018 to 2020, he didn't pitch at all. He had Tommy John surgery. It's unclear if like the procedure was botched or what, but while he was returning from Tommy John surgery, before he was actually pitching in games, I believe, he re-tore the ligament. It's not clear. I think it was just the surgery didn't take, basically. So while he has had Tommy John surgery twice, it's not like he had the surgical graft, pitched for a few years, and then had to have another one like Shane McClanahan, for example. In Ragans' case, I think it is more fair to mostly just say he had one Tommy John surgery that had to be done twice, or at least one injury that had to be done twice.
And it was a long time ago at this point.
Right. That was in 2018 and 2019. Since then, the shoulder injury last season was the first arm injury that he has dealt with. Now, it was a rotator cuff strain that put him on the 60-day IL. I think it is absolutely something to be concerned about. But he came back from it, and it didn't slow him down. He was dominant in the 3 starts he made after coming back. The stuff all looked incredible. It was like 22 strikeouts in 12 innings or something. He was remarkable after the injury. So Scott said we've seen him do the thing, the ace thing, right? We've seen an ace season from him. We have also seen him pitch after this injury, and he was healthy and effective. That is not at all to say that there is no risk for Cole Ragans in 2026. I think there is probably elevated risk of injury relative to the other pitchers we've talked about so far. But there's no performance risk as far as I'm concerned.
Me neither.
And so
I don't worry about the skills at all. It's just the injury.
If the baseline level of injury risk for any starting pitcher is like 35%, maybe his is 45% or 50%. Yeah, I'm okay saying that. I think Hunter Brown collectively might have more risk because he also has whatever the baseline level.
Hunter Green, you mean?
No, Hunter Brown.
Okay.
I bring him up because he has whatever the baseline level of injury risk, which is not nothing.
Oh, I see.
And we have performance questions about him. Logan Gilbert had a flexor strain last season that cost him about a month and a half. Brian Wu, last year was really the first time we've seen him stay healthy. So while, yes, there are things to be concerned about with Cole Ragans, for me, it's just can he stay healthy? It's a binary question. He either stays healthy or he doesn't. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to be one of the 5 best pitchers in fantasy.
He could be, if he throws 180 innings, the SP1.
The number one, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple quick follow-ups. His swinging strike rate would have ranked second among starting pitchers behind just Tarek Skubal. His K per 9 rate would have been 3 more than anyone else with 100 innings. So, yes, I mean, this is how dominant Cole Ragans is. But getting back to the injury risk, of the pitchers we've already talked about, he's number 13 in ADP, of the top 12, I would say Hunter Green is a greater injury risk than him. I would say Jacob deGrom is a greater injury risk than him. I would say Chris Sale is a greater injury risk than him. And I'm ranking Sale 4th overall.
I think it mostly just comes down to age for Chris Sale, but I actually don't think his injuries represent risk. I think the injury that Cole Ragans had last year represents risk. I don't look at Chris Sale's injuries the past 2 years and think there's any risk there.
Yeah.
There's just the general risk of being 37.
I think there's just a fundamental difference of how we look at it, because among the top 15 starting pitchers, I do think Cole Ragans has the highest risk of injury. So I think it's just, we look at it a little bit differently. And so if, you have a higher tolerance for what happened to him last year, then yeah, you're probably going to wind up with him more than I am in drafts. And I already took him in 2 drafts. Whenever I do it, I usually kind of make sure I have an SP1 before him or back it up with someone I think is safe. which nobody really is. Let's talk about Freddy Peralta, who was traded to the Mets this offseason, coming off one of the best years of his career. 2.70 ERA, 108 WHIP, 204 strikeouts, over 176 and 2/3 innings. His value, end of season value, when you look at his fantasy points scored and where he ranked on the player rater, it is boosted up by a career high 17 wins. So keep that in mind. A lot of his underlying metrics were very similar to previous years when his ERA was typically in the 3.6 to 3.8 range. He was helped out by an 85.5% left on base percentage. Career mark is 76%, and a 243 BABIP. Career mark for him is 265. So, Chris, I think Freddy Peralta is a good pitcher, but he just feels overvalued when fundamentally I don't think he's changed very much, and his ADP last year was 112.
Yeah, it would be overstating the case, I think, a little bit to say he hasn't changed at all, because there was a pitch mix change. I think he threw his curveball more last season. I would imagine the Mets might have some more changes. They are a tinkering team. But if you look at the skills indicators that we typically look at, strikeout rate was within a half a percentage point. Walk rate was within a half a percentage point. xERA, 383 in 2024, 342 last year, but 335 in 2023. That's all within the margin of error, I think. And then you look at the price, and he was 112 in ADP last season, and now he's 65 at NFBC. He was 59 the year before, so 2024 or 2025 is kind of the outlier, but it's just kind of the thing where I'll buy the dip if it comes. I'm not going to buy the rise. So I think Peralta's fine, but he is like the platonic ideal of a kind of low end number 2 SP for fantasy, who's being drafted as kind of a fringe SP1. And I just don't think he's worth that. So fine player, bad price, I think.
Yeah, his ADP on Fantasy Pros is as the SP15. So if you play in a deeper league, he might be your SP1 if you wait a little bit. So I don't mind him if he slips a little bit in drafts, but he typically doesn't. So if he's going to be a top 60 or top 70 pick, it's probably just not going to be for me with Freddy Peralta there. All right, before we hit our first break, make sure to like this video, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment in the chat while we're live or after we're live, and let us know who is your number 1 starting pitcher sleeper this season. Let us know in the comments. We appreciate it. Let's take that break. We'll be back right after this.
This isn't just combat. It's cinema.
Ready or not, here I come. Let's go! Are you not entertained?
The new home of UFC, Paramount Plus.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball. Today it's our starting pitcher preview part 2, and we'll continue on with ADP. We're into the 6th round with Joe Ryan, ADP of 65, George Kirby at 67, Dylan Cease at 70. So, Joe Ryan, with any pitcher, there are positives and negatives. So let's take a look. For Ryan, the positives, love the strikeout rate, 10.2 K per 9, 28% K rate, great control, elite whip pitcher, 1.06 whip for his career, 22.8% K minus walk rate, 4th best among qualified starting pitchers last year. The negatives, he is a heavy fly ball pitcher, and he had a really bad barrel rate against last year, so he is prone to home runs and some of these blow-up starts at times. His swinging strike rate has been trending down over the past 3 seasons. He also struggled down the stretch, and while he's good, he's never really delivered a workhorse season. He hasn't thrown more than 171 innings, and that's fine. Like, I think it's 160 plus in 2 of the past 3. He's more of an SP2. That's fine, but we haven't seen like 180 plus out of Joe Ryan just yet. So, Scott, for you, do the positives outweigh the negatives here in the 6th round?
I mean, I'm lower on him than the consensus, so I guess the answer to that would be no. I'd be fine taking Joe Ryan as my number 2, or even as a very low end number 1 if I went super cheap at starting pitcher. I like that he excels in whip. I think that's the main category to prioritize. But I do think the perception of him exceeds the reality a little bit, because he's probably going to be a negative for ERA, excuse me. Definitely a positive for WHIP, but probably a negative for ERA because he's so vulnerable to the long ball. Last year, the 342 mark was a career best. And I mean, you've already covered it, but the innings, he did reach 171 last year. Previous year was 135. It is really 4 years where he's been a full-time starting pitcher, and only 2 of those years has he gotten to 150. So I think that's what you should expect between 150, 160. Hasn't been a model of durability necessarily, but there hasn't been the major injury that would make him a widely accepted injury risk. So that limited innings total cuts against his high strikeout rate a little bit. And I think it prevents him from being a true anchor for your fantasy staff. I said he could suffice as a low end number one, and he could, but obviously you're swimming upstream at that point, starting pitcher, and are going to have to load up on a lot of mid-round upside plays if that's the role that Joe Ryan ends up filling for you. So I think we're, what is he, 15th, 16th in ADP? Is that where we are?
We are at 16.
And I have him 20th. I think if you're going to, whether we're talking about a number 2 or a really low end number 1 here, I would prioritize George Kirby and Kyle Bradish over him. I think they are better equipped to fill that role for you. But Joe Ryan is not far behind them.
One thing I'll point out with Joe Ryan, only 6+ innings in 14 of 30 starts. So I would downgrade him a little bit in the head-to-head points league. Should have mentioned this with Freddy Peralta. Definitely downgrade Freddy Peralta in a head-to-head points league. He only went 6+ innings in 13 of 33 starts last year. That was tied for 41st among starting pitchers. So 2 names in a row here. I think better in a categories league. For Freddy Peralta, the strikeouts matter more. He doesn't go deep into his starts. And for Joe Ryan, that whip is much more meaningful in a categories league versus in a head-to-head points league. Let's move on to George Kirby. It was a weird season. He had shoulder inflammation during spring training that caused him to miss the first 2 months of the season. Once he was back, he wasn't exactly the same pitcher. He dropped the arm angle. He changed the pitch mix. Control wasn't as immaculate. Was that all because of coming back from that shoulder injury? I think it's possible. From a performance perspective, he did seem pretty similar. His first 2 starts back were rough. If you exclude those, I'm doing the Scott White thing right now. 3.68 ERA, 114 WHIP, nearly 10 K per 9 over his final 21 starts. So pretty close to normal George Kirby type stuff there. I want to make sure he looks all right during spring training. He's, I think, a pitcher to watch. But overall, Chris, I like the discount that we're getting here. Just 2 years ago, his ADP was inside the top 40 overall picks, and I think we all thought he was overvalued then. Now that he's outside the top 60, I feel all right about buying the dip, assuming he's healthy, of course.
Yeah, I have him ranked 17. I think we're at SP 17. The order's a little different. I've got at least one guy that we haven't talked about yet, although we will very shortly, ahead of him. But I think the thing for me with Kirby is I don't necessarily know how high the ceiling is here. Does George Kirby have the upside to be a 225 strikeout guy?
Probably not.
I don't really think so. And so you really need him to stand out in ERA and WHIP. He's never been an ERA standout. The WHIP is always very good. Even last season when he wasn't very good, 119 is fine. And it was 107 the year before, 104. Anything south of 1-1 is very good. So I think Kirby, I think where we are right now is clearly in the SP2 range, which makes sense. We're at SP17. But I don't think we're talking about pitchers that I really think have a very realistic chance of being SP1s. In Kirby's case, I think maybe you could get a low-end SP1 season, but it probably doesn't look a whole lot better than like what Jacob deGrom did last season, which is great. He's a really good player, but I don't like. I can see Dylan Cease being the number 3 SP. I can't really see it with George Kirby. He would have to have just an outlier ERA year
Well,
But
I think the things that help him, if unless if you need to finish your point, go ahead. But I think the things that help him are whip standout because he's such a good control pitcher. Workhorse. So obviously he had the shoulder injury early last year. The previous 2 years he was over 190. So on an obvious contender like the Mariners, that should lead to a good win total. The ERA is probably going to run a little high, but not any more so than Joe Ryan or Freddy Peralta. I think we can. Obviously, he was plenty useful last year, but 4.21 ERA, 119 WHIP, those were out of character, and I think we can just toss them out because that shoulder injury at the beginning of the injury just messed him up mechanically. You look at the arm angle; it was much lower last year than it had been previously, and after an offseason of rest, I think he's going to get that right. I think he's going to come back looking more like the George Kirby we remember. And shave maybe as much as a runoff as ERA, at least 0.75, get that whip back below 110 and, hopefully return to being the workhorse. That shoulder injury is really the only health issue that's come up for him. And it was just a season opening IL stint. He didn't have return trips to the IL.
The thing that Frank mentioned about watching him in spring, the thing specifically to watch is that arm angle. It dropped from 37 degrees to 29 degrees, and the splitter was never a super important pitch for George Kirby, but he basically stopped throwing it. And you could see him throughout the year, if you watch the game logs, experimenting with the splitter or the changeup that he had gotten rid of a couple years ago and then tried to bring back. That, to me, is the sign that George Kirby just wasn't right last season, but it's also possible that moving the arm angle down was a conscious decision, whether to make the fastball play up, which worked, or to try to keep him healthy. My guess is it was a response to the shoulder injury.
Yeah.
That he just couldn't throw as pain-free with the higher arm angle that he had in the past. That's why I want to see it, though. Because if he comes out this spring and the arm angle's the same and he can't throw that splitter or changeup, then I do wonder if, he might just be the guy he was last year, which I don't think 4.21 ERA, but it was a 3.88 xERA. He got hit a lot harder. I think there could be just a lowering of the ceiling for Kirby if what we saw last year carries over. But that's not at all guaranteed. So Kirby has been the one guy that I've kind of, every time I write about him, it's like, I will let you know how I feel once we see him in spring training, because I really don't know which version of George Kirby to expect right now.
Speaking of spring training, by the way, Friday, February 20th, we have spring games.
Today,
later.
Wow.
Yes, let's go. Yankees first one. Let's go. Tune in.
And the calendar feels so early this year.
It is. I believe it's the earliest opening day ever, not counting Japan or Australia or Korea.
Well, I can tell.
Yeah.
Oh, I can definitely tell. I've been putting X days until opening day in the lead of every newsletter, counting down to opening day. And every time it's a little bit of a jump scare for me. It's like 35 days? What? There should be at least 3 months until opening day. I'm not ready, but I will be.
Let's talk about Dylan Cease and, oh boy, coming off a huge letdown of a season, 4.55 ERA, 133 WHIP, still tons of strikeouts, but as somebody who rostered him in multiple spots last year, it was brutal. Now, I think it's very telling that early on in free agency, the Blue Jays came out, dropped the hammer, gave this guy $210 million over 7 years. Seems like they clearly trust him. The whiffs.
Scott doesn't.
He's like, I'm not so sure about Dylan Cease. The whiffs were still amazing. His ERA peripherals were all under 3.6, and he has been incredibly durable. 32 plus starts 5 years in a row. Chris, I know that you've said this often. You like to buy the dip on Cease when he's coming off a bad year. Last time he had a bad year, his ADP the next season was 105. Now it's around 70. I wish we were getting more of a discount, but I think everyone kind of knows the same things and is looking at the same.
We're smarter.
And be better, yeah.
And I think it's worth noting that the last time he had a bad season, he had a 4.58 ERA and a 4.16 xERA. He just didn't pitch well in 2023. I don't think that's what we saw in 2025. He had a 4.55 ERA in 2025, so on the surface it looks very similar to 2023, but 3.46 xERA. And it's not so my way of looking at Dylan Cease is we have the one season where the peripherals were bad and the ERA was bad. We have another season where the ERA was bad and the peripherals were good. But it's not like we have this long track record of him underperforming his peripherals where we can say, okay, clearly there's something that the peripherals are missing. I think he just ran into rotten luck last year in a way that I don't really think is likely to continue. The Blue Jays are a good team. I think if he pitches exactly like he did last year, he's going to have an ERA a run lower.
Specifically, when you refer to him having bad luck, this is something I've noticed about the on again, off again pattern for Dylan Cease. So this past year, the past 4 years, ERA 4.55, 3.47, 4.58, 2.20. The BABIP the last 4 years, 3.20, 2.63, 3.30, 2.60. That is the strongest correlation I can see in his numbers. Is the bad years, the BABIP is high. The good years, the BABIP is low. He's going to a Blue Jays team that, I mean, it certainly has a strong infield defense. We're not sure about Okamoto at third, but the other three spots are very strong.
Okamoto should be fine, I would guess, based on
I would think, reports. But it's hard to say till we see him. He is the reason why I don't totally buy that explanation I'm giving is because he's consistently a very good bat misser. And so you would think he would be a pitcher who is less susceptible to defense. So I don't know that it's, just every other year he's had bad defense behind him, but it'll help. It'll help. The reason why I'm a little reluctant to buy him at this price is because when he's bad, he kind of wrecks you in a categories league. Like the ERA is bad. The whip is bad. You regret the day you drafted him because it's not just like, it was a little underwhelming. Like George Kirby, the ERA was high.
That was me last year. I regretted every second of it.
The ERA was high, but the whip was still okay. And it's like, I'm getting something out of this guy. Dylan Cease, you really weren't, other than strikeouts, I guess. But I feel more comfortable buying the discount in a points league, I think, actually, because obviously ERA and whip aren't scored directly in that format. And as long as your guy is giving you consistent innings and a chance to win, he should be pretty useful. So there's less, you feel a worst case scenario for Dylan Cease in a points league, you're still probably using him and feeling okay about it. Worst case scenario under categories league, it's like, I got to get this guy out of here. And, that's the sort of thing that you don't even know for sure. Like maybe he has a bad April. What does that mean? Does that mean he's going to have a bad May through September? No, not at all. And so it's the sort of thing you can only look at in retrospect and say, boy, it really ruined me having Dylan Cease on my team because he never pulled out of this. So it's a commitment that could make or break your team. Even at the reduced rate this year, it could make or break your team. And so I would need him to be discounted further, like you were saying, Frank, to take him at least in a categories league.
Nah, y'all play scared.
I also think he's just an inherently volatile pitcher because of the command, right? Like he walks a lot, and I think he misses spots, and when he does, like he can get tagged and he can get hit hard at times too. So he's a
my only problem with that is you look at the pitchers going ahead of him. I think that's less true of George Kirby, but a lot of volatility with Joe Ryan and Freddy Peralta. And then you look behind him, a lot of volatility with Jesus Luzardo.
It's not
Valdez,
the same kind of volatility as I was saying. I addressed this already, Chris. Were you even listening?
Jesus Luzardo's worse at his worst. Framber Valdez, the year-to-year consistency is pretty good, but he's kind of a headache. So I think in theory, yeah, I'd like Dylan Cease cheaper. I'd like every pitcher cheaper than they currently are going. But I have a hard time looking at the rest of this range of pitchers and thinking, I got to move Dylan Cease down.
I feel just the opposite.
Yeah.
I feel just the opposite. I look at that like, yeah, I mean, I've already said it, and I don't want to belabor the point, but like when Dylan Cease goes bad, you want to hit the eject button on him completely. When these others go bad, it's like, well, I'm a little disappointed, but he's still one of my better pitchers.
Yeah, I mostly just think he had one weird season.
Yeah, that might be the case. That is entirely possible. And again, the Blue Jays are treating him like they think that is the case based on how much money they gave him. So I know we're not supposed to look at fantasy this way and we tell others not to do it. I mean, he just burned me so hard last year. I haven't been able to press draft, but that's just a me thing. That's like, that's like a mental bias for me. So I might just miss out on a huge bounce back season from Dylan Cease. We are into the 7th round of ADP. Jesus Luzardo at 76, Framber Valdez at 80, Kyle Bradish at 80, Nick Pivetta 81, and Blake Snell at 82. But as we know, Blake Snell is hurt. I don't even know if he's hurt. He's just being slow played, and he's going to start the season on the IL. His NFBC ADP in February is 114 with a max pick of 189. So he is slipping in drafts, and probably rightfully so. We'll see. Let's talk about Luzardo. Interesting pitcher to evaluate. He was traded to the Phillies last offseason, immediately changed the pitch mix, introduced a sweeper, which was awesome. The fastball velocity back up over 96 miles per hour, which seems to be a key number for him. The skills were awesome among qualified starters. He was 7th in swinging strike rate, 8th in K- walk rate. All of his ERA estimators were 3.40 or better. But he had back-to-back starts in late May where he was tipping his pitches. He allowed 8+ earned runs in each of those. And obviously that inflated the surface level numbers. Also has a history of arm injuries. So some of that volatility that you were talking about here, Chris. With that said, he is entering a contract year. So I lean by because of the skills. Scott, what do you think about Luzardo?
Yeah, I have him higher than the consensus. So if you take away those 2 starts, which were among the worst starts any pitcher had in baseball all year, and were obviously influenced by the pitch tipping issue, comes out to a 3.03 ERA, 111 WHIP, 10.6 K per 9. Clearly an ace-like performance. And that 3.03 ERA is more in line with the ERA estimators than where the ERA ended up because of the two ruined starts. So I think we've seen a breakout here from Luzardo. It was a long time coming. There were a lot of injuries that delayed it, but I think it's happened now. And obviously he has a great supporting cast. I'm not saying he's without risk, but I think the risk is mostly health related as opposed to performance related.
So you guys are taking Jesus Luzardo ahead of Dylan Cease.
I am. Yeah.
I think I have Cease one spot higher.
I think that's crazy. I think it's insane. Like, I think Jesus Luzardo has exactly the same kind of performance risk concerns that Dylan Cease does. And he has basically zero track record of stringing together multiple healthy seasons in a row. Like, and we're talking, like, this is not like, oh, he fractured his rib, or, he did hurt his hand playing video games, I believe was the, but like
those darn kids.
I don't think he got out of high school without getting Tommy John surgery. And then I think he had a shoulder issue as a prospect. Since he's gotten to the majors, he's got the fractured left hand. Be careful playing video games. It's not that serious. Don't slam your controller. Show some respect for your controller. They're expensive now. Strained left forearm, tightness in left elbow, moved to the 60-day out with tightness in the left elbow, and then a stress reaction in his back in 2024. He has never thrown more than 101 innings in consecutive seasons at any level.
No, but 2 of the last 3 he's thrown 2 of the last 3, he's basically thrown 180. One of them was 178 and 2/3. But okay, let's 180 basically. 2 of the last 3. That's
pretty
improvement.
good.
That's
Dylan
a step in
Cease-
the right direction.
Dylan Cease throws 32 starts.
Yeah, Dylan Cease has not missed
He
a start
has to
since
this
like
point.
2019 or something.
He has to this point. We used to say that about Garrett Cole and Zach Wheeler.
Right,
So,
but come on,
he's not immune.
Right, but we know Dylan
do we?
Cease has. Yeah, if we know anything about injuries, we either know nothing about injuries, and I'm open to that idea, or we know Dylan Cease has less injury risk than Jesus Luzardo. That does not mean Jesus Luzardo will get hurt and Dylan Cease will not, but there is no formulation possible by which you could say Dylan Cease and Jesus Luzardo have comparable injury risk.
I agree with that.
I think the injury risk for every pitcher is high. I think Luzardo's is probably higher.
I think it's way higher.
I think
don't
so
think
too.
it's way higher. I think it's high for every pitcher, and so that may just be a difference in evaluating pitchers. I think, I don't think you can trust any pitcher to stay healthy.
I don't either.
Okay.
I think you can trust Jesus Luzardo a lot less than Dylan Cease, though.
We said this with Cease before. I kind of feel this way about Luzardo. I like buying him when he's coming off the down season, when he's coming off the hurt season, right? Like I was all over Luzardo last year. I drafted him everywhere. Now that you have to use a top 75, top 80 pick to get him, I mean, there's a few guys in my top 20 rankings that I just, a lot of times I just skip over. Like I let somebody else draft them. And I mean, if they fall to a certain point, like, yeah, and I need a pitcher, I'll take them. But, Cease has been one of those. Luzardo has been one. I think like Hunter Brown is another one that I mentioned yesterday. It's just, I usually just skip over those guys. So look, they're all really talented. You can afford to be kind of pick and choosy about who you like. You're most likely going to get a talented pitcher in the top 6 or 7 rounds. But typically Luzardo is someone that I have just skipped over.
Serial bet Dylan Cease versus Jesus Luzardo. Let's go. But let's make it more interesting.
You two.
Innings.
In innings?
Oh, yeah.
Who throws more innings?
See, he won't do it.
That's not a good bet
All of a
for me.
sudden, there's $8.69 to the General Mills Corporation, and
How
Scott's
much
backing
does cereal
away.
cost in New York? Holy cow.
Really expensive. It's like the one thing that's like, well, okay, that's not true. We don't want to talk about rent. But at the grocery store,
My gosh.
cereal is bonkers expensive. Everything else, not that much more expensive than like South Florida, actually. But I don't know that
You should
the
get cereal shipped to you.
The cereal tariffs or something are crazy
Oh my god.
in New York City.
It sounds like Chris might get some cereal shipped to him after the
No,
season.
if-
He loses
if you-
that, Scott.
If you want to say who has the better fantasy season overall, I'd be willing
See,
to
he's
bet
backing
that.
away. He's backing away.
All right. Do we have a handshake agreement here or what?
2.5 minutes ago was everybody gets injured, and now that there's $8
Right,
on the
but
line,
even
he
if
won't back it up.
51% to 49% in Cease's favor, it's still a dumb bet to make.
I'll
for
give
me.
you Dylan Cease minus 10.5 innings
Dylan Cease minus 10.5 innings.
versus Jesus
So
Luzardo.
Dylan Cease has to throw 11 more innings than
Yeah.
Luzardo.
Yeah.
I'll think about it.
I like Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
All right,
You can
we-
put
we
the
have-
order.
That's what I
in
got
now.
for Frank in the cereal bet I lost last year.
Okay, well let's do Reese's Puffs then.
But you know what? It was a different kind. It was like apple
was-
pie cinnamon toast crunch. It was
I don't like that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Don't mess
yeah.
with what
Stick
works.
to the classics.
Yeah, I wanted to try something different. It's like
Yeah,
it was something that I would never buy myself, but I'll let Scott buy.
I think it was out of print, so that ended up being like an $8 box of cereal, but that's fine. I did it for you, Frank.
Only in New York.
What were we talking about? Oh,
fantasy
I
baseball.
I just wanted to make the point that we can get animated about our favorites here among this group, but I'm still probably just taking whichever last to me. I'm not being that choosy about it.
And I have Luzardo roughly where he's being drafted anyway. It's not like I'm totally out on Luzardo, but I agree with Frank. I'd rather not with Jesus Luzardo, I think.
Let's move on to Framber Valdez, who settled, still got a lot of money for a 3-year, $115 million deal with the Tigers this offseason, even though he was looking for a much bigger contract. Like Logan Webb, he is one of the premier workhorses in the game, 190-plus innings in 3 of the past 4 years. He is streaky at times when he loses that curveball. We saw it in the second half last year, and he is a bit of a wild card. We all remember he pegged his catcher in the chest with a sinker last season. I do think being reunited with his former manager, AJ Hinch, is something that can help kind of keep emotions in check. Hopefully that's, I guess I'm kind of wish casting that, but I also like the landing spot. It's a good team. It's a good park. It's a great division to pitch in. So I like this price tag on Framber Valdez. I've actually been winding up with a lot of them. I don't see a huge difference between him and Logan Webb, and Framber Valdez is going 30 picks later right now.
Yeah, if anything, Framber's been historically a better bet for whip. That wasn't true last year. They were both pretty bad, but before last year, Framber was usually sub 1.2, usually closer to 1.1. So I think him and Logan Webb are very, very similar. Webb may be a better bet for volume. There is a 5-year age gap between them, or 4-year age gap. Framber is 32. He's a little older than I think you might think. But I think the price is great. I like Framber Valdez a lot.
Yeah, no, I can get on board with that. I don't know why I guess I know why he's being discounted so much, but I don't think it's rational. And early on you could say, oh, it's because he hasn't signed yet, but I don't think it's changed much since he's signed.
It's gone down a little bit.
Yeah, but it's not. I feel like we should be drafting Framber Valdez basically like we always have. Okay. And I understand the ERA was higher last year, but not outside the expected range of outcomes for him. I understand he had a rough second half, but I think it's, as somebody who was analyzing him on a granular level at the time, it seemed like he just lost the feel for his curveball, which he has a stretch most every year where that happens. As his career's gone on, he's become more reliant on that curveball, which makes the highs higher and the lows lower. I mean, he gets double-digit strikeouts pretty often now for also being an extreme ground ball pitcher. But when he loses the feel for that pitch, it doesn't seem like he has as much to fall back on. I think if the season had played out another couple months, this would all be. Nobody would have that same skepticism because there would just be. It would have gotten diluted by him regaining the feel for the curveball and that ERA getting brought back down to size. It's very last start of the season, 10 strikeout, 7 innings, 1 run. The curveball, he threw it more. It was great. I think he just ran out of calendar to get that ERA right. So I don't see evidence of real decline here. I think it was just a timing issue of when the bad stretch happened. And I think Framber Valdez is a great value. Another one who, if I went really cheap at starting pitcher, I could make do with him as a budget ace.
And he is someone, Framber Valdez, who does get a boost in head-to-head points leagues. He also gets a boost in category leagues that have quality starts as a category. So keep that in mind. Points leagues move Framber Valdez up a little bit. And something to watch in spring, or I guess let's see if there are any articles or quotes about this. Last offseason, Robbie Ray learned his changeup from Tarek Skubal. Framber Valdez, lefty, joining the pitching staff. Maybe he learns a changeup from Tarek Skubal. That would be pretty cool. Let's talk about Kyle Bradish, who was, keyword was, like the Ben Rice at starting pitcher this year. Almost everybody's pick to break out this season. He has made 14 starts combined over the past 2 seasons. 2.65 ERA, 105 whip, 12.6 K per 9. He was incredible in his return last year, albeit a small sample. Just last weekend, Bradish revealed that he expects to be on some sort of innings limit this season with an expectation of pitching in the playoffs. I guess the Orioles have to get to the playoffs first, but that could mean a 6-man rotation, skipping starts, spreading starts out. I don't think there's ever going to be a point where they just shut Kyle Bradish down or there's a phantom IL stint, but they are going to kind of spread him out a little bit here. After hearing something like that, has your enthusiasm for Kyle Bradish waned at all? Do you plan to lure him in the rankings at all?
Nope, hasn't waned at all. I think most pitchers are on some kind of innings limit. Not necessarily a strict number, could be a fairly high number. But I think every pitcher is being monitored to some degree to make sure they don't throw a ridiculous number of innings that compromises their long-term success. What I'm imagining the sort of innings limit is applying to Bradish, since we weren't given an exact number. If they said 130 innings, then it'd be a different story. But I'm imagining it being sort of like what the Pirates did with Paul Skeens last year, where there were some starts where he could have gone 7 dominant innings, but instead he went only 5.
Mm-hmm.
And, he still got to 187 innings. I'm not expecting Bradish to throw 187 innings, but I never was. I think 170 or so is still along the lines of what I'm thinking. Maybe it's more like 165. But I think they will be Cy Young caliber innings. And I've mentioned pitchers who could serve as a budget ace in this range. To me, Bradish is at the very top of the list, because I think just looking at what he's done the last 4 years, understanding that there was a Tommy John surgery in there that cost him a big chunk of time, but we're still looking at how many starts is it total? 44 starts. 278 ERA, 105 whip, 10.1 K per 9. And over the course of that time, the bat missing ability has gotten better and better and better, to the point, the 6 starts we saw him last year, it was 13.2 K per 9. It would have led the majors if he had enough innings to qualify. Though not if he and Cole Ragans both had enough innings to qualify. He's really good. And I think the the innings limit thing is being overplayed, and if that makes it more affordable, great. I'm happy to take advantage.
Yeah, I tend to think it is reasonable to assume that in a pitcher's first full healthy season back from Tommy John surgery, you can probably peg them to what they threw in their last healthy season before Tommy John surgery. So in Eury Perez's case, it was about 95 innings, right? About maybe 110 if you include the playoffs or the minors, which is about what he threw in his previous season that he was healthy for. For Sandy Alcantara, it was 185 innings back from Tommy John surgery? Well, he got about 180 his last healthy season. Bradish's last healthy season was 168.2 innings. I think that's probably about what I expect. Maybe it's 160. Maybe it's 175. I don't think if Kyle Bradish is healthy for 32 starts, it's going to be 150. This is not a Drew Rasmussen situation. Probably. I suppose I can't say for certain. The Orioles might just take that tack with him, but I think it's really unlikely. So there will be a couple of disappointing starts. There will be some point in June where we're like, man, why didn't they let Kyle Bradish go longer? But I don't think the innings limit is going to be like a hard and fast rule. I think we're going to see Kyle Bradish used more or less like how Freddy Peralta or Joe Ryan are. And I think he's going to be better than those two guys. So I actually do have him ranked ahead of Peralta, a little bit behind Ryan.
And if you are, for some reason, in a draft where everybody is using projections, might create a buying opportunity for you on Kyle Bradish, because he's projected for between 130 and 146 innings across all the projection systems, and that feels a little bit light. I mean, even with hearing this, I agree with you guys. I don't think he gets to 32 starts. I think they maybe skip him here and there, but maybe it's like 28 starts and 160 innings or whatever that might be. But when he pitches, I think he's going to be really, really good. Kyle Bradish.
You know what? Screw it. I'm moving Joe Ryan behind him too.
Oh,
yeah.
Woof. Right here, live on the podcast.
Rationalize that for you in my head.
Yeah, it's just like, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
No.
All right. Let's move on to Nick Pivetta, who signed with the Padres last offseason, and he finally put it together. 2.87 ERA, 0.99 whip, 190 strikeouts, over 181 and 2/3 innings. He finished as the SP13 in Roto, SP10 in fantasy points per game. When you dig in, his underlying numbers were actually a little worse than previous years. He's a fly ball pitcher, but even with that, 235 BABIP, much lower than the rest of his career. He also allowed a lot of barrels, but avoided home runs. And maybe pitching in Petco Park, that will just continue to be the case. Maybe he will just continue to have really good home run luck. I think the BABIP probably comes up a little bit, and there is some regression, but even with that, the price tag isn't egregious, but it's just a fade for me. Scott, how do you feel about Nick Pivetta?
Yeah, I have him as part of my busts this year, which isn't to say I wouldn't draft him if he's the last pitcher available in this tier. I've done drafts where he was, and I've taken him as my number 2. And okay, I'm not so confident in any bust pick I make that I wouldn't accept obvious value. But I do think there is bottom out potential here. He was he went from being one of the big underachievers in the ERA estimator for basically his entire career, certainly in more recent years, to being one of the biggest overachievers in ERA. So it was 287 as compared to a 4 xERA as compared to a 385 xFIP. And a big reason for that is, okay, he went to a more pitcher friendly environment finally. Was able to take on a true starter's workload finally. Wasn't as good of a bat misser as we had seen. Did not live up to our wildest imaginations for what he could be in this scenario. He masked it pretty well because that ERA was so good. But again, I think that was kind of fake. So I think he'll be a plus in WHIP. He might be a negative in ERA. And the strikeout rate, I don't really know what to expect. I don't know that he's clearly a plus in that anymore. And then there's a chance, he gives even more of it back than on that scenario I laid out, which is why I have him as potential bust.
Pivetta's pretty clearly the worst pitcher we've talked about so far, right?
Yeah, that's probably fair.
I think in terms of skill set and certainly track record, his track record is, I think, by far the worst of any pitcher we've talked about. I don't know. I rank him below his ADP. He's closer to 30 for me. I think he's okay, but I would not feel good about my pitching staff if Nick Pivetta was my number 2.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point that you bring up about Pivetta's skill, right? Like it feels like a clear teardrop after, the Joe Ryans and Bradishes and I guess Luzardos of the world down to someone like Nick Pivetta here. Let's talk about Blake Snell.
I do have him in the same tier to just, to put all the cards on the table. But I would say if you consider him in an entirely different tier, you're definitely not going to draft Nick Pivetta.
All right. I am not drafting Nick Pivetta. Yeah. Let's talk about Blake Snell. As of February 16th, he's yet to throw off a mound as he's ramping up slowly after a deep postseason run. Only made 11 starts in the regular season, but when he pitched, he pretty much looked like himself. He was great in the postseason as well. We just have no idea when he'll return. Not even entirely sure what he's dealing with. I mean, if you guys know, please let me know. It just sounds like
shoulder fatigue from.
That's what it is. Okay.
He pitched with the shoulder injury last season. He missed like most of the season, 2/3 of the season with a shoulder injury last year, and pitched through pain in the postseason, and then they've said he just felt fatigued. So the official line is they're just taking it easy with him, but I don't know. Like he's not going to be ready for opening day one way or the other. We already know that pretty confidently. We know he's thrown more than 130 innings twice in a 10-year MLB career. I can't touch him at anything like this price.
Yeah, he's still in this, but I mentioned earlier his ADP in February is like 115.
But he's still a top 30 pitcher in top 30 SP in the month of February. I assume he's 39 among all pitchers. I think there are at least 10 starters ahead of him, or relievers ahead of him. So I'm guessing he's still top 30 SP. Maybe more recently, the move has been even more dramatic. Let's look since the 10th. No, he's number 40 pitcher, number 119 in ADP overall. I have him at 40 at SP. I have him, it's around 140th overall, so I'd still need a couple more rounds of discount. I get the upside case for Blake Snell. We just have a really long track record of him not hitting his upside very often. I think he'll probably be useful when he's on the mound, but even that's not a guarantee.
Do we have a really, when you say we have a really long track record of him not meeting his upside?
Yeah.
On a per inning basis, we don't. He's been awesome the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the whole season matters.
Yeah. I mean, you got to throw enough for
Yeah.
those
If I get
100,
if I get 125 innings from Blake Snell and he's the 40th pitcher off the board, I think that's probably fine. The problem is he's not the 40th pitcher off the board. He's more like 30th pitcher already, even since knowing that he's not going to be ready for. I don't know. Maybe everyone has been there for either the 2018 or 2023 seasons, and he won them their league, and that is why he gets this really wide benefit of the doubt relative to a pretty shoddy track record in terms of overall production. Like, this is a guy that has been in the majors for 10 seasons. He has been a top 30 SP at the end of the season twice. He is not going to be ready for opening day, and he missed most of last season with a shoulder injury. And he is a top 30 SP in ADP. You can say, yeah, but when he's on the mound, he's good. But there's lots of guys we can say that for who don't get the benefit of the doubt that Blake Snell does.
Who?
And
who is capable of doing what Blake Snell does, who is ranked outside the top 50?
Chris Bubich.
Carlos Rodon.
Yeah, that's fair, and I think he'll be back sooner than Snell, so he's probably going a little too late at this point.
Maybe Garrett Cole, I have no idea.
But you're naming other injured pitchers
Sure.
who would obviously be top 20 if they weren't injured.
Maybe, I don't know, Zach Gallen, Jack Flaherty, those guys have had good seasons recently. I don't know.
Yeah, but you wouldn't expect them to do anything close to it. I mean, Snell's actual percentages over the last 4 years, 2.76 ERA, 117 whip, 11.8 K per 9.
But we know the experience of having him on your team is not actually as good as all that sounds.
And like you
because
said,
he misses a lot of time.
It's
because he goes through these month-long stretches where he's terrible too.
Yeah, but he makes up for it, and he always obviously
but that's why
because the numbers are what they are.
Right, but that's why I said the experience of having him on your team.
It's this is a tired argument that Chris and I have had, I think, too many times over the last 2 years, and I feel like it's kind of moot at the moment because we have no idea when he's going to pitch again, so I don't really want to draft him either.
But he's still a top 30
I just think
SP.
you're being a little unfair because he's like a really good pitcher.
He's really good, but I have a long enough memory to where I know how the discussions actually go around Blake Snell in season. And I have seen him dropped in leagues because of those poor stretches. So I know that in practice,
novices.
Sure, we can say that, but
yeah,
there's a lot of people listening to this podcast. Not all of them, as we talk about all the time, have the patience or the track record to sit with it. It is also just really hard to look at your supposed ace with a 5.50 ERA in May, something that's happened 3 out of the last 4 years, and say, it's fine. It's fine. He'll be fine by September. That's true. It's hard to remember that in May, though.
He's also a bad whip pitcher. He is objectively bad. In his career, he is a 122 whip pitcher. Mm-hmm. And it's not just that he's only pitched 130 innings twice in his career. He's only done that one time in the past 7 seasons. Yeah. There's just there's no way. Risk, for sure. I'm starting my draft off. If I have a list of pitchers, I'm crossing Blake Snell off the list before the draft starts. I'm not taking Blake Snell.
But you don't say this about DeGrom. I mean, come on.
Jacob DeGrom just threw 170 innings and had a sub-1 whip.
But Blake Snell,
even when he pitches, he has a 122 whip.
Yeah, he's had a sub-119 whip twice in his career.
Okay, but it's been 117 over the last 4 years, and the strikeout rate is better than DeGrom, and the ERA is probably going to be better than DeGrom, and the injury risk is not any worse. Again, this is like hypothetical territory we're getting into now because Snell is already injured, so we should obviously avoid him. I just don't get why you guys hate him so much. Like, he's really good.
He is really good. For me, it's not that I hate him. It's that before this injury, he was a top 20 SP in ADP.
And he deserved to be, because how
I
many
just
pitchers are
really
capable
don't
of
agree.
doing what he does?
Oh, no. All right, we've got to move on.
I don't know if Blake Snell's capable of doing what he does.
We got to move on. We're rehashing the same things. Let's take our final break. When we return back into ADP right after this.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. Starting pitcher ADP. We left off with Snell, but we really left off with Nick Pivetta. So after him, we dropped down about 20 picks to Eury Perez. We'll get to him in a second. There is one name in between, and that is Ohtani, the pitcher. So we will quickly talk about him. On Yahoo, there's two different players. There's the hitter Ohtani, there's the pitcher Ohtani, and there is a feature if you play in CBS Commissioner Leagues where you can make Ohtani two players as well. So might as well just talk about it now. And Ohtani, the pitcher, so unique to evaluate because he is still ridiculously talented on that side of the ball. We just have no clue what his workload is going to be. He made 14 starts last season and performed like an ace. 2.87 ERA, 104 WHIP, nearly 12 K per nine, a 28% K minus walk rate, 14% swinging strike rate. Projections all have him for between 100 and 120 innings. I also just read earlier a quote from Dodgers GM Brandon Gomes. We're not going to put too much emphasis on the beginning of the season, and we'll just make sure he's prepared for the long haul. So what are your expectations for pitcher Ohtani?
Yeah, he's not pitching in the World Baseball Classic, I believe. Maybe they change that at some point. But right now, I don't think we're going to see Shohei Ohtani pitch in like a real game, possibly until the start of the season, which last year, that's how they handled his rehab process. He threw some sim games on the side and then just debuted when he was ready. And they will probably slow play this. I would guess he's not going to be particularly useful as a pitcher early on. I think he's going to be really good when he's on the mound because he always is. He has not had an ERA north of 3.31 in any season. It's just, can you count on him for 120 innings? That feels safe-ish, and they should be 120 really good innings. I don't really know what to do with him. I have him at 22 in my rankings. That feels too high, though, just for what he does as a pitcher, right? I don't really know.
I don't know. I mean, he's going to be dominant with the ratios. It's just a volume question, right? He was so good over his last four starts once he got to pitching 5+ innings with consistency and then into the playoffs. He is as ace-like as anybody as a pitcher, but he doesn't get the same volume for obvious reasons. And it's only a relevant question even in the on the rare platform that does split him into two pitchers, because if you're drafting Ohtani combined player, flexibility to use him at DH or pitcher, you're always choosing DH.
Right.
But I think we're starting to get into the pitchers with obvious innings concerns. Mm-hmm. It's not among them. But just they're going to dominate when they do pitch. And so I think this is probably the right range for Ohtani, the pitcher.
Yeah, I think so too. I have him ranked SP 21, and even if he gives you 120 innings when he pitches, I think it's probably going to be top 5 SP production. He's not going to give you the innings on a per start basis. Even if he's like a 5 and dive guy, he might give you, 7 or 8 strikeouts per start and have really awesome ratios. So it's got to be the right context. But yeah, if you play in a league where he's two different players, I'm okay with taking him around this point as probably as like your SP3 or SP4.
He's probably just Tyler Glasnow, right?
Yeah, I almost brought up the name, but I know you guys are down on Glasnow, so I didn't want to.
I actually think he's better skill-wise than
He is better. He is better,
Yeah.
but it's the same idea where it's probably just going to be 140 innings, but they're going to be. Really good.
I'd be thrilled if I got 140 innings out of Tyler Glasnow.
That would be
maybe
a career high.
120. Yeah.
All right, we move into the 9th round of ADP where we find Eury Perez at 100, Nolan McLean at 101, Sonny Gray 104, Kevin Gausman 104, Spencer Strider 104, and Tyler Glasnow, the aforementioned, at 107. Eury Perez, former top prospect, he's only turning 23 in April. He is still a baby. He returned from Tommy John surgery in June of last year. He looked really good initially. He hit a snag. Then he finished strong. I think he's going to be a star at some point. I'm just not so sure that it happens this season. He still struggles with walks, gives up a lot of fly balls, hard contact, barrels, leads to home runs at times. I also don't really see him throwing more than 150 innings this season. This could blow up in my face, but I have been passing on Eury Perez so far. I'd rather take my upside shots on these young pitchers. I can get them, 30 or 40 or 50 picks later. I'd rather just do it then. So, Chris, you're the Marlins fan. What are you expecting from Eury Perez?
I can see 160 innings. He got to like 117 last year. You tend to think 45 to 50 jump for a young pitcher who's never gotten there is probably pretty reasonable. That's probably the ceiling, and you can be a top 10 pitcher in 160 innings, but you've got to be elite pretty much everywhere. I think Eury Perez has a pretty good chance of being elite everywhere, though. He is not a finished product, but Eury Perez is 5 days older than Andrew Painter, who has not debuted in the majors yet. Eury Perez is about 20 months younger than Nolan McLean, who everybody loves and thinks is a finished product and all that, and he's super talented. I think there's a lot to like about him. Some stuff to not like. Spoiler alert. But it's just to highlight how precocious Eury Perez is. And he has more than held his own at the major league level so far. He gives up a lot of fly balls. He doesn't give up that many home runs because he does not give up hard contact very often. He gets a lot of those weak fly balls. And so what that does is, 105 whip last season. I think he's going to be a whip standout. The control's going to be good. He's going to get a lot of strikeouts. I think Eury Perez needs some tweaks. The breaking balls especially, he's still trying to figure out. He was like experimenting with a sweeper. He's still got the curveball and slider. I think once he figures it out, Eury Perez is going to have a top 10 season at some point. It might be 2026. I don't think that's the likeliest outcome, but I think he's fine at this price. I have him 22nd in my rankings.
So I think it's also important to remember, because he was worse last year than we saw as a rookie. Mm-hmm. But it's important to remember that coming back from Tommy John surgery, command is slower to come around, and that can lead to some of these struggles. Last 3 starts for Eury Perez last year were lights out. He looked more like he did in that rookie season when everybody acknowledged he was an up-and-coming ace. So I think I'm on the opposite side of you here, Frank, particularly somebody who likes to go cheap at starting pitcher and go for quantity in this range of the rankings instead of investing a lot at the top. The quantity I'm going after, I want them to have breakout ace potential, like I think Kyle Bradish does, and I think Eury Perez is in the same category. I'm actually curious about what you said leading into this, where you, rather than drafting Eury Perez here, go for one of the rookies, a few rounds later. Does that just mean you're skipping this whole range of starting pitchers? Because I don't know who is more attractive in this range than Eury Perez.
I do typically skip this range of
fair enough.
Yeah, I do think, like, we've talked a little bit about the SP dead zone idea. I think we're in it. I think this is where the interesting but unproven pitchers who we think have ace upside, but we haven't seen them before, or the guys who are kind of falling off but have a good track record. I think the last 10 or so that we've discussed has a little dead zone vibe to me, where I don't necessarily dislike all of them. I think I would like them all if they were a little cheaper. And unfortunately, they're not. That's how rankings work. I'm not saying I think Nick Lodolo should be ranked higher than the guys we're talking about, but I I like Nick Lodolo's price a little more, and I don't think he's so much worse. And that's just to name one random guy. I don't think he's so much worse than Freddy Peralta or Jesus Luzardo or Framber Valdez that it justifies what is a very significant price difference. And I think that's how I feel about this whole tier.
Yeah, that's typically why I skip this range, is because I know I can get. And Nick Lodolo, I don't know, has this upside, same upside as these guys, but I just like Nick Lodolo almost more. I almost rank him ahead of Eury Perez. So
no, I get that, and I, as I brought up on part 1 of the starting pitcher preview, I don't necessarily think the second pitcher you draft you have to say this is my SP2, because I think we're in that wide range of any number of pitchers here could perform like SP2. I guess just the way I like to put together my pitching staff, to me, it's not an either or proposition. It's a both.
Yeah.
It's a both.
More bites at the apple, basically.
Here is where I take Eury Perez, and later on there's where I take Nick Lodolo or Trey Savage or whoever it is.
And there's some opportunity cost to passing on this tier, because the number of, while we think there's not that much difference between this tier and the next 10 or we're going to talk about or whatever, every guy that you pass on means there's one fewer member of that tier. And if you want multiple bites at the apple, you might have to just hold your nose, spend that pick around 95 or 100 on a guy you'd rather spend it at 120, knowing that you're also going to take Trey Savage at 150 or Nick Lodolo probably later, I would guess. So
I think he's somewhere
140, so around the same. Yeah.
So I think it's just a fundamental difference of how we draft, because I'm not looking to take multiple bites of that like young upside pitcher apple. I'm usually just taking one of them. And so
I feel like the hitters
later on
in this range are more definitively less than the hitters we've already gotten past. When the pitchers, there's a lot more interchangeability. So that's why I do it the way I do it. But I know there's more than one way to win a league.
Let's talk about Nolan McLean. Yippee-ki-yay, mother. All right, let's get into it. 24 years old, got called up late last season, and he dominated in 8 starts, 2.06 ERA, 104 whip, 10.7 K per 9, with a 61% ground ball rate. He was awesome. Threw 161 2/3 total innings between the minors and majors, so it feels like he's ready to handle a legit workload here. He's got nasty stuff, huge spin rates. With that said, I don't entirely trust the strikeouts based on his swinging strike rate, and lots of walks in the minors I feel could make him a risk in the whip category. So, and I also just don't love the price when you could get, I think comparable pitchers in Cam Schlittler and Trey Savage, 30 or 40 picks later sometimes. So I like the talent, but I don't like the price on Nolan McLean.
I'm with you.
The poster boy of that, yeah.
I'm with you. I think I might just prefer you Savage straight up.
Yeah, for me, it was like a 1A and 1B situation with those two.
Right. They're close, but it's close. And by ADP, it's nowhere close. So I don't really understand. And honestly, I'm baffled by it, because Trey Savage was on a national stage and had huge moments on that national stage. And I thought everybody was going to be just enamored by him, and he would be one of those playoff risers, in addition to having all the hype of the rookie. And look at this incredible splitter and the arm angle. It's crazy. So I thought Savage would be the one who is elevated beyond all the rookie pitchers and priced out of my range. I'm kind of grateful that's not what's happened, but it's happened to McLean here instead. And the swinging strike rate for him, I understand he had 10.7 K per 9, and that's great. I don't think he's going to be a 10.7 K per 9 guy in the long run, because he just doesn't have that kind of swing and miss ability. It was a very ordinary swinging strike rate. There are control issues that we saw over the course of his time in the minors last year. Actually, the walk rate ended up pretty high. Even in
113 whip in the minors is not that impressive.
Right. The walk rate ended up high even during his time in the majors. I can't seem to pull up my notes here, so I'm just going off memory here. We're keeping it vague, but I know what I'm saying is in the right realm.
He was at 3.9 walks per 9 in AAA, 4.1 in AA.
Yeah.
So around 4.
So,
It's a lot.
so there's risks here. It's not like, yeah, he was great last year. Yeah, he has a lot of upside. I think he's my number 3 starting pitcher prospect. So, McLean is good. I think he's going to have a good career. I think he's going to be more of a Hunter Brown type.
Logan Webb has been my go-to comp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Webb, Framber Valdez, kind of that. I don't want to sell short his ceiling because he's such a young pitcher. Like, he could turn into anything. But it feels like his upside, what he can become, is more like a really high-end SP2 for fantasy.
For me, it's just we are supposed to be smart enough to know that ERA doesn't really matter. And we're especially supposed to be smart enough to know that ERA in 48 innings really doesn't matter. Now, he had a good ERA in the minors. Jonah Tong had a better one. Trey Savage had a better one. It's not like he was such an outlier in the minors. And it's just, why McLean? Why, because the way I have the pitchers, that second year crop of pitchers, is I have Burns a little higher. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like I might need to walk that back a little bit. But
Really? Oh, Chris is. I thought we were the Burns brothers, Chris.
I'm trying to be consistent. I think Chase Burns is the most talented of that group.
Yeah.
Am I so sure he's the most talented that I want to rank him 15 spots ahead of them or 10 spots ahead of them at starting pitcher? I'm not so sure, given there are going to be injury innings limitations. There is some injury risk, but
He might not even be in the rotation.
he is. I do not believe that for a second. That is
Yeah.
that feels like the biggest, Chase Burns has to compete for a rotation spot. Sure.
With Rhett
Okay.
Lauder, who is he competing with?
Yeah,
Louder a chance, man.
Well, I think Rhett Lauder is not totally uninteresting, but the same article mentioned Brandon Williamson, I think is his name.
Williamson.
Come on, dude.
I need to
Brandon
know-
Williamson is not competing with Chase Burns for a rotation spot. Look, if Rhett Lauder, who was a first round pick, went to the same school as Chase Burns, had a very good college career, if he just beats Chase Burns out for a rotation spot, okay, I guess.
You'll eat your hat.
Brandon Williamson is not going to beat out Chase Burns in an open, fair competition for a rotation spot. I think that report was total BS. I think Chase Burns is 95% guaranteed to be in a rotation. And so I do have him a little bit ahead. He's 27 at SP.
So let me.
But
I need to know if this is a legit battle, because I am putting together top 30 position battles this spring, and I did not even.
Chris and I recorded an
Yeah.
episode earlier, and that was one of the battles we talked about.
Okay, yeah, I didn't put Red's 5th starter on there because I don't think it's a legit battle.
I mean, it's probably not.
I don't think it's real, but there is an MLB.com article about it.
Okay.
If you want to check it out.
Yeah.
But that being said, the rest of the second year pitchers, I have McLean at 32, and then it's in straight order: Misiorowski, Schlittler, Bubba Chandler, Trey Savage. I don't really see a strong reason to prefer any of those 6 over any of the others. I think you can have your personal preferences, and McLean probably the safest of the bunch. He threw 160 innings last year. I think he'll be good. But I don't think he's such a sure thing that he needs to be, 60 picks ahead of Trey Savage in ADP? I don't understand why it's just Nolan McLean who's getting all this one. Cam Schlittler was really good last season. He's got a pretty decent innings workload under his belt. He was good on the national stage too. He had a 11 strikeout game in the AL Division Series,
Wild card round, yeah.
Trey Savage obviously was dominant in the World Series. None of these guys are significantly less talented than Nolan McLean, if they are less talented. So it's not a knock on Nolan McLean, who I think will be a good pitcher. You know the vibe it gives me a little bit? You remember when everyone lost their minds and were drafting Zach Plesac as a potential ace based on 8 good starts?
Don't say Zach.
Come on, don't do that.
I'm pretty sure Zach Plesac was also 24 years old or
But he
25
wasn't
years
that
old.
great of a prospect like McLean is.
Yeah.
Come on.
He wasn't.
That's not fair.
I'm just saying it is that type of overreaction to an 8 start sample size.
It is a very small sample size. Let's move on to Sonny Gray, who is now 36 years old, traded over to the Red Sox this offseason. He is one of these guys that the underlying numbers and projections love. Now, he still does a lot well. Big strikeouts, great control. He's thrown 166 plus innings 3 years in a row, but his fastball velocity has been ticking down. It was 92.9 in 2023. It was down to 91.7 last year. And that pitch got demolished last season. He also struggled in the second half, 5.45 ERA, 146 whip, 15 home runs allowed over 13 starts. And this last part is completely anecdotal. And if you guys want to call me a hater, like totally feel free to do it. But his last full season in a big market was with the Yankees, and he had a 4.90 ERA and a 150 whip. There were other things going on, like they wanted him to throw pitches he didn't want to throw.
Yeah, that was a pitch design thing, I think.
I mean, I have questions of like, can he pitch in a big market? Like he's pitched in other places, like whatever, and he's been fine. But I don't know. I worry about the fastball. I worry about the way he ended the season. He's getting older. This price just kind of really confuses me on Sonny Gray.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
This is the most confusing one so far because
he's just barely inside of my top 50, but just barely.
Yeah.
And here he is. His ADP is SP 3028.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It seems like a 36-year-old in decline because you mentioned he lost velocity, had a terrible second half. ERA's been bad the last 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. There's so many exciting pitchers still available. Why are you going after Sonny Gray here?
He's going to the AL East. He's got to face the Yankees, the Orioles, the Blue Jays.
To me, his role should be veteran stopgap for your fantasy team. Like once all the exciting ones are gone, I just need some innings here. I'm going to take Gray and hope it goes better than it did last year. And that is not at all how he's being drafted. So I'm confused too.
I've got like Chris Bubich and Mackenzie Gore ahead of him.
I think I do too.
Me too.
I just like
definitely Bubich.
I think there's a chance Sonny Gray might not be good anymore. 388 xERA last season. He's going to be 36. Boston does have a good and deserved reputation with developing pitchers, and in this case, it's not developing Sonny Gray, but it might be making some tweaks.
Tinkering. Yeah,
but it just doesn't feel like there's a ton of upside to be worth chasing when there are so many interesting pitchers left. When I was putting my rankings together, it was kind of like, well, I guess I've run out of guys I'm really interested in, so sure, Sonny Gray. But never going to be a target for me.
That's where I put Luis Castillo, too. It's just like, okay, this guy used to be good, and I still trust him to throw innings, but I'm not sure he's good anymore.
Yeah. And look, I don't want to completely disparage Sonny Gray because, like, the K- walk stuff is still really good, and he gets a lot of strikeouts, but I think there is ratio risk here, and I think there's a chance with that diminished fastball that maybe some of the strikeouts do come down with Sonny Gray. Let's talk about Kevin Gausman. Nice bounce back season with a 3.59 ERA, 106 whip, just under a K per inning. He did that over 193 innings last season. And remember, he dealt with a shoulder injury in the spring of 2024. And I'm just wondering if maybe a year further removed from that, he was healthier. His pitches looked better. His splitter performed much better last year. Swinging strike rate jumped back up to 12.6%. He's a proven workhorse. He's thrown 170 plus innings 5 years in a row. He's kind of a boring veteran. I guess, like, look, comparing him to Sonny Gray, maybe there's not a huge difference, but I expect the ratios to be better from Gausman. And I think he's a little bit better health-wise, and it's not like we have the velocity dip either here. So I don't mind Kevin Gausman as like a boring, if you just need like solid innings, SP3, SP4, I think it's fine.
I'm really surprised his price isn't higher, actually.
I think it's just because there's so many of these young pitchers around him, you know?
Like Sonny
Should be
Gray.
higher than Sonny Gray.
Yeah. He was really good in the second half. Like the final 3 months of the season, Kevin Gausman really locked in and pitched really, really well. He's old, but again, Sonny Gray. I feel like we can't fall back on the Sonny Gray crutch too often, but
He's this episode's Taylor Ward.
Low hanging fruit. Yeah. I think Kevin Gausman's good, and you're
Contract year too, if you like that.
there's some injury risk, but he's on a good team. He's been a consistent 180 to 190 innings guy. I think if you're going to go with the boring veteran, I think Kevin Gausman's a great boring veteran to make your SP3.
And definitely somebody I like even more in points leagues.
Yeah, I was going to make that exact point too. He does give solid innings per start and pretty good in quality starts as well there with Kevin Gausman. Let's talk about Spencer Strider. Oh boy. How much time do we have? First year back from internal brace surgery was a mixed one. So look.
That's really kind.
I know. It's kind to say that. His first 12 starts, 3.59 ERA, 115 whip, 10.9 K per nine. He looked really good those first 12 starts back. His next 5, 10.38 ERA, 231 whip, 8.3 K per nine. His final 6, on the surface, 250 ERA, but a 131 whip, 7.3 K per nine. His xFIP was over 5 during that 6-start stretch. So his first 12 were good. His next 11 were bad. That's basically the facts there. His fastball is broken. It was down nearly 2 miles per hour. The IVB on that pitch was down 2 inches, and it lost effectiveness from pre-surgery. His slider was still really good, but now he's basically a one-pitch pitcher. So he is the most obvious pitcher we need to watch in spring training more than anybody else. And I respect that he's like in a lab and he's trying to figure things out. But Scott, we either need to see improved fastball shape, velocity, or a legitimate third pitch that is really good that he can go to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, the curveball that he didn't throw much got great results last year. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's bringing in more of that to play off the slider. He himself has emphasized the importance of regaining that fastball shape, which I like to hear. I think he has a good grasp of what he needs to be successful. Good self-evaluator. He was kind of a self-made pitcher. He wasn't like some big prospect coming out of college, and he studied pitching mechanics and turned himself into this bat missing monstrosity that he was throughout the minors and into the start of his career. And mostly because of that slider, he still missed bats at a great rate last year. 13.9% swinging strike rate, would have ranked 7th among qualifiers. But he did have a 4.45 ERA. He did have a 140 whip. He did give up some of the hardest contact of any pitcher. Like, something's got to change here. Spring, I agree. I actually, with your point about him being the pitcher to watch closest in spring training, I recently released my 25 biggest questions for 2026, and number 2 was, is Spencer Strider salvageable? I think he is, but I expressed on the Valentine's Day episode that I know that's somewhat wishful thinking on my part, because Spencer Strider at his best was more fun to watch than any pitcher I've ever seen before. I think he's really smart. I think he has a good grasp of what he needs, and I'm just hoping that happens. But we won't really know until he takes the mound, and I would say history is against him.
Yeah, it's a little bit of blind faith, especially when his first live batting practice session facing live hitters is the one time apparently that the TrackMan tech wasn't working at Braves camp. I'm not a conspiracy-minded person myself. I'm just saying radar. My quote: the radar guns weren't working only for Spencer Strider's BP session T-shirt. Have people asking a lot of questions already answered by the T-shirt. I don't know. We got to see him in games. Hopefully, they get the technical difficulties ironed out by the time the games start. But if we see a 95 mile an hour average fastball velocity out of Spencer Strider this spring, I'm probably out. It's not, he can't, not to say he can't be good there. But I need to be over at Spencer Strider's current price. I need to have overwhelming evidence that he's fixed to justify it. And the problem is, if we get that evidence, he's not going to be the 105th player drafted. He's going to be the 70th player drafted.
Yep.
He's going to be a top 20 SP and ADP if he shows signs of life this spring. If people are this willing to make the blind faith leap on Spencer Strider with nothing, if we get anything, the price is just going to go way up. So that I just cannot see myself drafting Spencer Strider. If I do, it will be because I went into a specific draft saying, this is the one I'm going to draft Spencer Strider in, just in case. But I'm not optimistic.
Yeah. And for most people that only draft one or two teams, Chris, it's like, they don't have that luxury. They need to put together the best pitching staff they can for just that fantasy team. And maybe that includes Strider. I mean, I think there's a wide range of outcomes here where if he gets it back, I mean, he could go back to being like 80 to 90% of the pitcher that he was before. I mean, the low end is that he's just still broken and he's not usable for fantasy.
I just want to point out one other thing. Even more closely than the velocity, I'm going to watch the induced vertical break on that fastball because I think that's the more important data point for Strider. They are somewhat related. So, like,
they're very correlated, yeah.
Yeah, I doubt he's going to see a big jump in induced vertical break, and the velocities would be exactly the same, but that's the more important number for me.
Let's talk about Tyler Glasnow. Last year, limited to just 18 starts due to right shoulder inflammation. By now, we know he's never thrown more than 134 and a third innings in a major league season. And while the surface levels were still great when he pitched last season, we did see some skills decline. He had legitimately bad control. It was over 4 walks per 9 in both the regular and the postseason. His swinging strike rate dropped from 13.8% to 11%. And look, I don't want to be accused of being a Dodger hater or anything because we had the whole Blake Snell discussion, but I just don't think Glasnow's injury risk is worth the likely 120 innings that you're going to get from him here. So he's typically just been a pass for me in this range.
I mean, we used to pay a lot more for those innings, though.
I just don't think the innings are going to be as good as they were before, based on some of those skill declines that we saw last season. It was easier to make that argument when his skills were really good.
It's still small sample size. And
right.
He was so remarkably consistent before that I'm like, his walk rate was kind of the only, the swinging strike rate was down a little bit. He was pitching with
a lot of it.
But he was also pitching with a shoulder injury. He still had a 29% strikeout rate. He still had 2 really good swing and miss pitches. I'm inclined to just give him the benefit of the doubt here and say, yeah, he's going to be very good when he's on the mound. It's just, is it 130 innings this year? I hope so. Is it 90? Then he's not worth drafting there. And that's just kind of all it is.
Yeah, I think he's priced appropriately now because I think he's in this range of pitchers that have a lot of upside, but a lot of questions. Most of them, there are innings concerns among the questions. And so he's right there with them. It feels like there's a harder cap on what he could be. So I wouldn't say I'm excited to draft Tyler Glasnow in this range, but I think it's a fine range for him. And I have drafted him before because he lasted among the latest in this group. And I'm fine taking him then. I think he'll help your ratios, but obviously can't expect him to be there all season long.
God, this range is just all landmines, isn't it?
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
All right, well, let's talk about some more, I guess.
Yeah, I was just looking at the next name coming up.
Into the 10th round of 12-team leagues, Brandon Woodruff with an ADP of 113, Jacob Misiorowski 115, Chase Burns at 116. So Brandon Woodruff accepted the 1-year qualifying offer to return to the Brewers this offseason, and one of the more improbable comebacks that you will see from a pitcher who had shoulder surgery. His fastball velocity was down nearly 3 miles per hour from the last time we saw him, but to his credit, reinvented himself, introduced this new cutter, and he was incredibly effective. His underlying skills were incredible. And I mean, just his surface level numbers were really good too. 11.6 K per 9, the swinging strike rate right in line with the rest of his career. He only made 12 starts. I mean, that's kind of the problem here. He ended the season on the IL with a strained right lat muscle. I have no clue if he can stay healthy, but I was incredibly impressed by what he did last season.
I was moved by what he did. Like, I feel like this is an inspiring story that did not get it reported to the degree it did. Like, a pitcher who is as fastball reliant as Woodruff is loses 3 miles per hour on that pitch and is better than he's ever been before. I legitimately mean that too. Strikeout rate, the best it's ever been. K per 9 rate, the best it's ever been. He looked as ace-like as we've seen him. And he used to be drafted like an ace every year. And he was always an injury risk then too. He usually wouldn't take on a big ace workload, have some kind of injury that would interrupt it. So I think he's a bargain here. I'd feel a lot better about it if he didn't end last year with the lat injury. So we haven't seen him come back from that. And are there any lingering effects? But he came back from a much more serious shoulder injury and looked as good as he did. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And, playing off what Chris said before about all the landmines here, and I said it depends how you look at it. The way I look at it, the way I like, the reason why I like drafting somebody like Woodruff so much, despite the obvious risks, is because a lot of these pitchers to me, yes, it could go wrong. It could go wrong in obvious ways, but they have stud potential still. And I think all the hitters at this point in the draft don't have stud potential. So, yes, it could go wrong, and that's why I try to get a high quantity of these pitchers to help mitigate that risk. But if you're looking to improve your team's overall bottom line, to distinguish yourself from the competition, I think you have to take some risk, and I think this is a great spot in the draft to do it because all the upside is there while it's kind of run out within the hitter ranks.
I think I'd rather make the bet on the risk of Brandon Woodruff than his teammate, the next guy we're going to talk about, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's do that. I do like targeting Brandon Woodruff, by the way, in a shallower format because if he gets hurt, I mean, you could just drop him or whatever. But the deeper you go, obviously, the replacement value is much worse. So 10-team league, 12-team points league, that's probably where I would want to take a shot on Brandon Woodruff. Let's talk about his teammate, Jacob Misiorowski.
Because I'm the Miz, and I'm awesome!
He was awesome at times last season. He is a freak, Misiorowski. He's 6'7", averaged 99 miles per hour on his fastball with 100th percentile extension. That thing gets on you fast. He has huge upside, but right now you are drafting stuff. You're not really drafting a pitcher. He still has questionable control and only completed 6 innings 3 times in 14 starts. Absolutely a chance that he just takes a huge step forward. But I would, again, I guess kind of like Eury Perez earlier, I would take my upside shot on a more polished pitcher, which, Chris, I don't know. I don't think Misiorowski is yet. I think he's a thrower, and I think he throws really hard, and he has some nice things about him. I don't think that he's anywhere close to a pitcher yet.
Yeah, I want to be careful because I have been guilty of writing off the, 30 grade command guys before, and like you can find it. I think Sandy Alcantara is a very good example of a guy who really figured that out, but he had terrible command early on in his career. I think there are more misses than hits, but among those misses, Misiorowski has the best stuff. He might have the best stuff in baseball. It's just he's so far from being a finished product, and it requires so much projection and so much growth to get him to being worth this kind of pick that I'm going to rank him here. I'm probably not going to draft him here, I think is the way I'm going to put it. I get the appeal. I get the upside. He could be really good, but among the rookies in terms of where they're at and what I expect, I think he's the furthest away in terms of present day skills.
And that's why I can't rank him here, because there's still We still haven't gotten to Savage. We still haven't gotten to Cam Schlittler, who, isn't exactly a rookie, but, first full year coming up. We still haven't gotten to Chase Burns, for goodness sake. It's like there's I think the likeliest scenario for Jacob Misiorowski is he performs just this year, just looking at this year, is he has a very Mackenzie Gore-like season. And Mackenzie Gore is going, 70 picks later? And by the way, Mackenzie Gore himself might take a step forward. Yeah. He might be the one of the two who has these same issues that might take the step forward. Just to put it in perspective, because I know a lot of people, Jacob Misiorowski, he took the league by storm, made the All-Star team after 5 stars. Flat on his face after that. Over his final 9 outings, 5.89 ERA, 150 WHIP, went 5 innings in just 3 of those final 9 starts. He was unusable in the second half, and that's why we sound so down on him now. The control issues that held him back as a prospect came back in full force, and maybe he overcomes them. I would bet on him not, though, based on what we saw in the second half. I would bet on him not in the immediate future.
I think he also just has some pitch design issues. His slider is a cutter. It's a 94-mile-an-hour cutter. He only got a 20% whiff rate with it. It actually got hit kind of hard last year, surprisingly. His curveball misses more bats, but I think he would benefit from a slower version of the slider, something in the 87-mile-an-hour range that's more of a sweeper that truly misses bats. I think that could give him some consistency, but Misiorowski's so far from a finished product. I'm ranking here just kind of out of fear of how good the stuff is more than anything.
I mean, that's the thing. The stuff is tantalizing. We spoke about
specifically.
You spoke about Stuff Plus yesterday. 119 Stuff Plus on Fangraphs for Misiorowski. For some perspective, last year among qualifiers, Garrett Crochet, Tarek Skubal were the leaders. 116. Misiorowski's Stuff Plus metric was better than those guys. So there's no doubt he has stuff. It's just, can he pitch yet?
But I want to emphasize, because sometimes I throw so much analysis that I think the main point gets lost, and I see some of the comments and I feel like they're just not hearing me. The biggest issue with Misiorowski...
Turn you up, Scott.
The biggest issue with Misiorowski here is we're not at a point in the pitcher pool yet where you just need to blindly gamble on upside. There's still too much that's still really good and more predictably good than Misiorowski is. That why take the chance? It's the reward isn't worth the risk.
Let's talk about Chase Burns, the pitcher Chris loves on Valentine's Day. Surface level numbers in the majors last year were bad, but huge strikeout stuff. I mean, you guys gave out all the crazy stats. It was awesome. And he demolished the minors. 177 ERA, 0.77 whip last year, 12.1 K per 9 down there. The questions that we have, he missed about a month last year with a strained right elbow flexor. I know, Chris, you kind of speculated well, was it a real injury? I guess we'll never know. He only got up to 109 in a third inning. So it's how much do they push him this year? Can he really get much more past 140 or 150? And yeah, we kind of talked about the spring training battle. I don't think it's a real battle, but I guess it is technically a question there. So what are your expectations here for Chase Burns?
I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be really, really good. I think that the only real concern I have is just trying to wrap my mind around the flexor strain, because I talked about it on the Players We Love episode, but they started talking. There's an MLB.com story about how they had a conversation about limiting his innings, but they didn't give any details. And then I think 2 days after that, he's shut down with the flexor strain. And then 3 days after that, he's throwing again. That doesn't really sound like I'm seeing a lot of discussions on Twitter of Chase Burns, huge injury risk. And yeah, he throws 100 miles an hour. There's huge injury risk. I don't think there's significantly more injury risk with Chase Burns than any other pitcher who throws 100 miles an hour. I don't think that, I'm not going to say it was 100% a phantom IL stint, but the timing makes me think that this was not an issue that they thought, we got to get Chase Burns off a mound right now or his arm's going to explode. It was yeah, he's a pitcher. We can find something in his arm. So we need to shut him down. We'll shut him down. That's my guess. It's just an educated guess, but
At the very least,
I think I'm moderately educated, so I think it works.
you don't even have to, accuse the Reds of anything. Just he was throwing again 3 days later. It wasn't that serious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that serious. They wouldn't have done that with him if it was. And he came back and he pitched in a relief capacity, but it didn't come up again. So I don't think, I don't see him as an injury risk of any particular magnitude. I think obviously it's inherent to what he does for a living. I think he is, we talked about this on the Valentine's Day episode. He's made 8 career starts and had more double-digit strikeout efforts in those 8 career starts than Paul Skeens has had in 53 or something like that. He's going to be a monster. Burns is, as long as he gets the innings, but you could say that about any pitcher. The innings caveat at this range of the rankings.
I definitely would prefer Chase Burns to Jacob Misiorowski, though.
Yep.
If you guys are drafting him, ideally, what do you want him as on your team? Scott, I know you just draft a bunch of like SP2s, but as what, like your SP3 ideally in a draft?
I probably, maybe even, you'd have to draft him earlier, I think, to guarantee you get him. And I've been waiting too long. It turns out, even though I rank him pretty high, I have yet to draft Chase Burns because somebody else is always there to take him even higher. So 3, I guess, realistically, if you're targeting him specifically, is what you should aim for. Because I go cheap sometimes, I might have to aim more for 2. But obviously, I'm loading up on pitcher quite a bit after that. And I'm taking him ahead of where this ADP is, so some of these other guys are going behind.
All right, let's wrap up here with sleepers, breakouts, and busts at starting pitcher. We're looking inside of the top 200 in ADP. On our next preview episode, we'll go a little bit deeper. So outside the top 200, we'll talk about some sleepers and breakouts there as well. But guys, I cannot imagine an episode being over 2 hours. So please, let's do this in like 10 or 12 minutes because that would just kill me if we actually got to a 2-hour episode. So, Scott, some sleepers.
Start with Chris.
Wait, can we talk about Blake Snell for a little while longer?
Yeah, I'm probably.
I think that would be really helpful.
I'll edit some of that out of the audio. That'll help.
Okay, sleepers. Chris Bubich for sure. I think he's one of the most obvious ones. He missed a lot of time last season with a shoulder injury. It's one of those ones where they were going to have to limit his innings at some point anyway. They were already talking about shutting him down. So could he have come back? I don't know, but he's so cheap that I don't think it matters that he has injury risk.
SP64 as SP64 197 overall.
218.7 over the last 10 days at NFBC. He's just so cheap, and I think the skill set was so strong last year. So Chris Bubich is an easy one.
I passed it off to Chris because I didn't think I was allowed to say Chris Bubich because he's being drafted so late.
Okay, he's technically inside the top 200.
Top 200.
He is?
A Fantasy Pros ADP.
Not on NFBC, though, right?
Joe Musgrove is not, right?
Man, that's...
My other two are outside the top 200.
Next time you got to go first, Scott. Joe Musgrove, 42.
I thought I wasn't allowed to pick ones going this late.
No, you can't. Actually, Joe Musgrove is outside the top 200.
Yeah, I can't pick him. I can't pick Joe Parker Messick, so we'll talk about those guys tomorrow. Spoiler alert. Mackenzie Gore.
Yes.
Who may be more of a breakout, but he was, I believe, the only starting pitcher last season with 4 different pitches that had an above-average whiff rate. There is huge bat missing potential. We've seen it in action for months at a time before he inevitably falls apart. Now he's getting, I think, an organizational upgrade, a park upgrade, a supporting cast upgrade, every kind of upgrade possible. I think there's a real chance Mackenzie Gore finally emerges as a top 24 SP this year.
Agreed. The ADP for Mackenzie Gore, interestingly enough, I know in the NFBC it's around 200, but on Fantasy Pros it's 151 as the SP 47. So
it's around where I have him ranked.
Yeah. So it takes some of, I guess, the profit potential out of it, but I have him as a breakout. So he was a name that I was going to mention for all the reasons that you did. Like, we've seen all the flashes of stardom from Mackenzie Gore. He's done it, first halves of seasons and then completely fell apart. Just hoping that the change of scenery, the Rangers have done pretty good job with pitching the past couple of years, and
very good.
Just a really, really good environment. It's a much better defense, and we know the skills out there. It's like he had 4 different pitches with a whiff rate over 35%. It's insane stuff. Somebody did email us. I want to, I don't know if I have it in front of me, but someone did email us about Matt emailed about the importance of pitching coaches changing teams. The Rangers did lose Mike Maddox, who had been their pitching coach for a while. So wanted to throw that out there, but I'm not going to hold that against Mackenzie Gore, especially because he's NFBC leagues 183 over the past 10 days. He's still very cheap there. So if that's the price, especially, I think Mackenzie Gore's an easy pick. All right, Scott, sleepers. Snip, snap, snip, snap.
I just want to emphasize with Chris Bubich that I don't believe his ADP, frankly, because every draft I've been a part of, he goes 80 picks earlier than that. So I love him, and I think he's undervalued, but I have yet to see direct evidence of him being undervalued. I didn't write about this guy as a sleeper, and it's kind of an awkward one, but Trevor Rogers, I can't call him a breakout, obviously, after what he just did, but I just think people are sleeping on. It's the Jerks and Profar situation from last year, where I think the natural response is, I don't believe Trevor Rogers a 181 ERA and .90 whip. Well, I don't either, because if I did, he'd be a top 12 pitcher. I don't know why we can't even draft him in the top 45. To me, he's around 30th, which I don't know exactly where to put him, but that's the point where I see the risk increasing in the pitcher pool to a point that, okay, I can justify the risk of taking Trevor Rogers coming off a 181 ERA and 18 starts. Velocity was better last year. The control was better. It makes sense that he was better. This much better? No, but
add 2 runs to the ERA, he's still worth drafting there.
Yeah, I would say, I would agree with that. I guess you could call this guy a breakout, but I'll put Bubba Chandler in this group just because I think relative to the other rookie pitchers, he's being slept on. He is the number 1 pitching prospect to me, ahead of both Savage and McLean. Obviously, he didn't get as much time in the majors, and he had that really frustrating stretch in the minors that prevented him from getting called up earlier. But I think we have evidence of him saying he was frustrated, and that contributed to his struggles. Once he got to the majors, those control issues were gone. Like, he was, granted, tiny sample, but he was maybe the best control pitcher in baseball. He walked 4 in 31 1/3 innings and showed huge bat missing potential. Just looked dominant. Just looked like he's ready for this opportunity. He's going to get it for the Pirates. Wouldn't be a shock to anybody if he's the rookie of the year in the NL, outperforming all of these rookie pitchers, and yet he's going latest among them. I think I'd be just as happy with him as Savage or even McLean.
Trevor Rogers is ADP SP 48 at 154, and Bubba Chandler SP 51 at 165. And just for some perspective, yes, he is going about 40 picks after Cam Schlittler and Trey Savage. So
who themselves are going like 40 picks after McLean, right?
Yeah, because in FBC, Chandler and Savage are back-to-back at least.
Yeah, they are in Fantasy Pros too, but they're at 127. Okay. And then Chandler is down at 165. So it's a pretty big drop down to him. Sleeper here for me, I'm just going to quickly mention Nick Lodolo. I spoke about him on the Valentine's Day episode. Player I love this season. I feel like the breakout just happened, but people are just not really treating him like it happened. So I trust what he did last year. He got even better in the second half. There were more whiffs there. He tweaked the pitch mix, and he's dealt with some injuries, but it's been like some lower leg stuff and blisters. It hasn't been arm related. So I think if we get a full season, like 170 plus innings out of Nick Lodolo, people will just realize how good he is. And we're potentially talking about him as like a top 20 starting pitcher drafted next season. So let's move on to breakouts. What do you guys have? Anybody left to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, Chase Burns, Eury Perez.
Take your pick.
Yeah, Ryan Pepio is one we have not mentioned, who I
like it a lot.
I like the move back to Tropicana, especially because his fastball will play even better there, and it's a very good pitch to begin with. But I think we could see a drop down to like the low threes for Ryan Pepio with a bunch of strikeouts. And then I'll put the homer hat on. Sandy Alcantara. I think he figured it out in the second half. He had a 3.13 ERA. The strikeout rate was back up to like 22%. He's never going to be an elite strikeout pitcher, but he doesn't need to be. I think Sandy's as good a bet as basically anyone to lead the league in innings. He threw 174 in his first season back from Tommy John surgery, and I think they're mostly going to be very good innings.
Mm-hmm. Final 8 starts for Sandy, 2.68 ERA, 0.86 whip, almost a strikeout per inning, 3.62 FIP, 3.27 xFIP. He looked pretty close to the pitcher that he was before the surgery over those final 8 starts. ADP on those guys, by the way, Sandy is at SP. Let's see, SP 50 at 159. Overall, Ryan Pepio, SP 44 at 144. So, Scott, any breakouts?
Yeah, sure. Emmett Sheehan is a breakout. His final 6 appearances last year, 3 of which lasted 7 innings. So it's not like the Dodgers were being super careful with his workload. 3 of his last 6, 7 innings. 1.11 ERA, 0.62 whip, 12.5 K per 9. His swinging strike rate in those 6 appearances was 19%, which has only been done by Spencer Strider that we have records for over a full season. Obviously, this was just a 6 appearance sample, but still premium bat missing ability for Emmett Sheehan. And with the Dodgers rotation already seeing some injury losses, I feel more secure in the fact that Sheehan's going to be a fixture there. And I think I'm excited to draft him. They'll manage his innings too, but he'll start a lot. And I'm also going to say Gavin Williams here, who just doesn't seem to be getting enough credit for the strides he made last year. I get it, 127 whip to go along with the 306 ERA, but looked a lot better in the second half, and specifically in terms of control. 218 ERA, 105 whip, 10 K per 9. The strike rate went from 61% to 66%. The swinging strike rate from 11% to 14%. And report came out, I think just today, he explained that he made a mechanical change from the first half to the second half that helped him to have so much better command. It was kind of the position he put his hands to start his delivery. I think the breakthrough actually happened last year, but it was a truncated one, and so people aren't really buying into it yet. But you should. Gavin Williams.
The breakouts here for me, 2 names we haven't mentioned yet, but when I look at my expectation for all the young pitchers versus price, the ones that I like the most are Cam Schlittler and Trey Savage, where they're being drafted right now, which is right around 130. Cam Schlittler got called up last season. Took him a little bit of time to get going, but his final 9 starts, 2.23 ERA, 0.99 whip, 11.2 K per 9. He threw the 8 shutout innings with 12 strikeouts against the Red Sox in the playoffs. You know, there are some questions, lots of walks, high whip in the minors as well. So it's similar to Nolan McLean, but you're getting him 30 picks later than where McLean is going. And Trey Savage, I mean, it feels like the proof is in the pudding, right? Like we all just saw what he did, right? When you consider where he started last year in A-ball and making it all the way up to the majors and pitching in the World Series the way that he did. If you look at all 9 of the starts he made once he got called up, you know, end of the regular season and postseason combined, 3.46 ERA, 118 whip, 12 K per 9, also right around 4 walks per 9. So similar problem, I think, for all these guys like McLean and Schlittler, even Bubba Chandler struggled with walks in the minors. Like, keep that in mind. Like, they could have higher whips, they could struggle with walks, but all have incredible stuff, including Trey Savage. So for me, it's Schlittler and Trey Savage that I like the most at cost right now. Busts, I assume they're pitchers we already talked about, but any names?
Do we need to save any for tomorrow? Busts? No? Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of later guys I have that I'm not going to touch, like Roki Sasaki and Shane Bieber. At their prices, I don't think the upside is actually there.
Among the pitchers we talked about, Nick Pivetta is a bust for me. Nolan McLean is a bust for me just because I don't like where he's being drafted. And Jacob Misiorowski, I think, is a clear bust for me. The one we haven't talked about yet is Robbie Ray. I think he may be done. He had a great first half. Looked like after a bunch of injury-plagued seasons, he had regained his form, picked up that Tarek Skubal changeup. Things were looking great. But then his final 12 starts, a 5.54 ERA, a 1.45 whip. Even worse, his swinging strike rate went from 13.1% to 11.6%, and the command was so bad that he failed to go the minimum for a win in 5 of those 12 starts. So he was pretty useless in the second half, getting up there in years, a lot of mileage on an arm that struggled to stay healthy. I think Robbie Ray, unless it's really cheap, I'm out on him.
3 pitchers we talked about today, just pretty much stayaways for me. Spencer Strider, Blake Snell, and Tyler Glasnow. Lastly, Scott, are you taking the serial bet? We need to know before we wrap up the show. It's Dylan Cease minus 10.5 innings versus Jesus Luzardo.
Sure. I'll take with the innings, the innings handicap there. Yeah, I'll do it.
All right. I'm going to put it on my calendar for the last day of the season. So
just do a remind me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap there for Scott and Chris. We went over 2 hours.
I was watching.
I was trying to get through.
I was watching you watch the clock as Scott was talking about Robbie Ray, and I could tell you were just like, "Oh, just wrap it up." Nope, we didn't get there.
All right,
we didn't get there.
For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again next week. Bye bye.
First ever 2-hour show.